There's a voice inside us all, a quiet whisper that says, "You're not enough." That voice is a lie. It is fear in disguise. Today, I invite you to kill that voice, not with anger, but with truth. You are stronger than you think. Scars are not signs of weakness, they are stories of survival. Pain can either break you or build you. I chose the latter. Life will test you, but your inner strength defines how you rise. Speak louder than your doubts. Believe in the beauty of your dreams. And remember, your journey isn't over unless you stop walking. Silence the inner critic, the voice that lives quietly within us, yet echoes louder than any external judgment. It's that whisper in the dark moments, the one that questions your worth, your talent, your purpose. It's the persistent shadow that follows every step of progress with doubt. And though invisible, this voice often becomes the strongest barrier between who you are and who you are meant to become. This voice doesn't always scream. Sometimes it arrives softly, disguised as realism. It tells you you're being practical when you shrink your dreams. It convinces you to avoid risks, to play small, to delay your goals until you're ready. It masquerades as protection, but it's really fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. And the more you listen to it, the more it grows until eventually you begin to believe it. It begins in childhood. One bad grade, one disappointed look, one careless comment, and suddenly the seed is planted. Over time, the voice becomes familiar. In moments when you want to speak up, it tells you you'll sound stupid. When you're about to take a leap, it reminds you you're not capable. And when you look in the mirror, it picks apart your reflection, highlighting every flaw, real or imagined. This is the critic, not a guide, not a teacher, but a thief. A thief of joy, of confidence, of potential. To silence this voice is not about pretending it doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that it is not you. You are not your doubt. You are not your fear. That voice is simply a collection of past pain, fear, comparison, and conditioning. It speaks from a place of insecurity, not truth. And when you begin to understand this, you stop giving it the authority to shape your identity. Imagine what you would do if the voice were gone. Would you finally share your story, start that business? Speak your mind? Would you stop apologizing for your existence and start embracing it instead? The inner critic wants you to wait until you're perfect, but perfection is a myth. Growth only happens when we move despite our fears, not in the absence of them. Muniba Mazari once said that we are all broken, and that's how the light gets in. Her story is not one of weakness, but of unimaginable strength, not because she never heard the inner critic, but because she refused to let it win. Paralyzed in an accident, told she would never walk, never paint again, never live the life she once dreamed, she faced every reason to give up. But she chose to rewrite the narrative. She chose to transform the voice that told her she was less into a voice that declared she was more than her body, more than society's expectations, more than her circumstances. That's the power of conscious defiance. Choosing to hear your own truth louder than the fear. Choosing to believe in your worth when everything else tells you otherwise. It's not easy. In fact, it's a daily decision. You wake up and choose not to accept the critic's version of your story. You choose to replace "I can't" with "I will try." You choose to face discomfort because you know that comfort zones never shaped extraordinary people. Sometimes silencing the inner critic means surrounding yourself with voices that uplift instead of undermine. The people you allow into your space matter, because criticism can be contagious, so can courage. When you hear someone else rise above their doubt, it gives you permission to rise above yours. When you speak kindly to yourself, even when you fail, you're building a new voice, one rooted in compassion, not condemnation. The inner critic is persistent, yes, But so is the human spirit, and while you may not be able to eliminate the voice forever, you can shrink its influence. You can make your belief louder. You can write affirmations that contradict its lies. You can take actions that prove it wrong. Every time you do something it said you couldn't, you weaken it. You must also remember that confidence is not the absence of fear, it's action in the face of it. Opiniony, but opinions aren't facts. You don't need to negotiate with it. You don't need to explain yourself. You need only to keep moving forward. The critic lives in the past, in every mistake, every failure, every not good enough moment. But you are not living in the past, you are evolving, and evolution demands that we leave behind what no longer serves us, including the voice that insists we stay small. There is something extraordinary that happens when you begin to believe in your own worth. You start showing up differently. You speak with more conviction, you take chances, you stop waiting for permission. You start building a life not limited by fear, but expanded by possibility. The inner critic will try to remind you of your limitations, but your inner strength can remind you of your power. That voice inside may speak in doubts, but you can respond with clarity. You have every right to rewrite the narrative. You do not need to be a prisoner to old beliefs. You are allowed to grow out of your past. You are allowed to walk into rooms you once felt unworthy of. You are allowed to be bold, to take space to fail, to get back up, to rise again and again. The voice will still whisper, but it will no longer command, because now you've found a louder voice, the one that says, "You are enough, you always were. Turn pain into power." It sounds simple, almost poetic, but behind those 4 words is a depth most people only understand when life breaks them open. Pain is not something we invite. It is not something we celebrate when it arrives. It comes without warning, often when we are least prepared, and it doesn't knock. It breaks the door down. It can take the shape of loss, rejection, failure, betrayal, loneliness, or even silence. Pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits with you, quietly weighing on your chest, making it hard to breathe, hard to move, hard to believe that joy still exists somewhere. But what if pain wasn't the end of the story? What if it was the beginning of something stronger? The world teaches us to hide pain, to numb it, to rush through it. We are told to move on, stay strong, get over it. But true power doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from walking through it. It comes from facing it without running, from sitting in the darkness long enough to let your eyes adjust. When you do, you realize pain has been trying to teach you something all along. Pain reveals what matters. It strips away the noise. It shows you your raw self, unfiltered. It tells you who you are when everything else is gone. And it gives you a choice: stay in the hurt or transform it. That choice is where power begins, not power over others, but power within yourself. The kind of strength that cannot be taken away, because it was earned in silence, in tears, in long nights when no one was watching. Pain has a way of introducing you to your limits, and then daring you to go beyond them. It tests your resilience. It asks you whether you will be defined by what broke you, or by how you chose to rise. It asks you whether you will carry your pain like a weight that drowns you, or mold it into a tool that builds something greater. Turning pain into power is not about pretending you are fine. It's not about fake smiles or quick recoveries. It's about honoring your wounds without letting them become your identity. Some of the most inspiring people in the world have not lived easy lives. They have lived through storms, through unimaginable heartache. But what sets them apart is not that they escaped pain. It's that they transformed it. They allowed pain to sharpen their voice, their vision, their purpose. They used it to fuel their art, their leadership, their compassion. They turned their suffering into a reason to stand up for others, to speak out, to build, to heal, to lead. Take Muniba Mazari as an example. Life handed her pain she never asked for. A tragic accident left her paralyzed, her body broken, her dreams shattered. But she made a decision. She would not let pain have the final word. Instead, she painted from her wheelchair. She spoke with fire in her voice. She told the world, "I am not disabled, I am differently abled." That is not denial. That is transformation. That is pain reborn as power. When you use pain as fuel, you begin to see differently. You start appreciating the smallest moments. A smile, a sunrise, a heartbeat. You stop taking people for granted. You begin listening more, judging less. Pain softens you and strengthens you at the same time. It humbles you and elevates you. It teaches you empathy, because once you've known deep pain, you recognize it in others. You no longer just hear their words, you feel their silence. You no longer just look at their face, you see behind their eyes. Turning pain into power is a personal journey. There is no universal timeline. Some heal in months, others in years. But the transformation starts with a mindset, the refusal to let pain bury you, the refusal to let it define your future. It starts when you stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" The pain has already come. You can't change that. But you can choose what comes next. You can use your pain to create something that didn't exist before. A story, a mission, a movement, a new version of yourself. Pain can become the birthplace of creativity. Some of the greatest art, music, writing, and innovation was born not from comfort, but from struggle. When you're broken, the pieces you gather to rebuild can create a stronger, more beautiful structure. You are no longer the same, but maybe that's the point. Maybe pain isn't about returning to who you were, but about discovering who you're meant to become. The journey is messy. Healing is not linear. There will be days when it still hurts. There will be triggers, flashbacks, setbacks. But none of that means you're weak. It means you're human. The power comes not from erasing the pain, but from continuing to rise in its presence. From finding joy again. From laughing when you didn't think you ever could. From dancing in a body that remembers the ache, and loving in a heart that was once broken. When you choose to turn pain into power, you begin to see your story differently. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as a warrior of resilience. The past no longer chains you, it shapes you. You begin to understand that what you went through gave you depth, gave you wisdom, gave you a voice that can now speak into someone else's darkness. Your survival becomes someone else's hope. Your journey becomes someone else's roadmap. You may never fully forget the pain, but you will no longer fear it, because once you've faced it and turned it into purpose, it loses its grip. It no longer controls you, it becomes your companion in growth. You learn to carry it with grace, not as a burden, but as a reminder of who you are and how far you've come. You begin to recognize the strength in your softness, the fire in your calm, the power in your presence. Pain may knock you down, but it also invites you to rise differently. It asks you to rewrite your narrative. It dares you to become someone stronger, wiser, more awake. And when you answer that call, when you choose to rise, when you create beauty from brokenness, you become unstoppable. Pain does not come to destroy you, it comes to awaken you. The moment you decide to no longer run from it, but to rise through it, is the moment you begin reclaiming your power. Your scars are not signs of weakness, they are proof that you chose to heal, to fight, to grow. Let your pain become your purpose, your fuel, your strength. Because when you turn pain into power, you don't just change your life. You become the light that helps others change theirs.